Hi, I'm Michael Apple for BizNews.com. It's a great pleasure to chat to Piet Leroux. He's the Chief Executive of Sakeliga. Just as background, Piet, somebody who doesn't know who you are and what you do, just give us that background.
Hi, Michael. Sakeliga is a business organization. We're a not-for-profit organization funded by business people to promote a good environment for business. And we do that in the public interest and for all communities where our members do business. We have in excess of 11,000 members all over South Africa. And we do a lot of public interest litigation as well as several other activities. But everything we do serves the purpose of a good environment for business in the public interest.
Great. Now, I want to start off by quoting from the National Empowerment Fund's recent press release about R1 billion being made available after the July riots. Quote, among the criteria for funding, this is funding for businesses, applicants had to be a registered company, close corporation or cooperative in good standing with SARS. Applicants were also required to demonstrate that jobs lost would be restored or increased within 12 months of receiving the funding, and to demonstrate that they were negatively impacted by the riots and unrests in both provinces. The mandate of the NEF is to support black economic participation, so the beneficiary enterprises had to be owned and managed by black entrepreneurs, explains the NEF. What's wrong with that, Piet?
The National Empowerment Fund is limiting the assistance that it is providing to businesses that had suffered during the KZN riots on the basis of race. Now, that is not the first time that happens in South Africa. We think it is problematic for several reasons. One, because as soon as you reserve the assistance to such companies, you in effect penalize companies who do business across racial barriers. So if you reserve aid to companies and say that they need to be 100% black owned, 100% black managed, then you're saying, well, we're not going to assist those companies who have black employees or who are co-owned or co-managed or co-operated. So these types of subsidies and incentives actually detract from what you should expect to be a normal process of inter-community business relationships in South Africa. So that detracts from normal business. And then secondly, the problem with the money that the National Empowerment Fund made available here is that a sizable portion of that, about a quarter, comes from the Solidarity Fund. And Michael, the Solidarity Fund was brought into being in 2020 in expectation and in the wake of the early lockdowns and the presence of COVID-19. But I'm quite certain that the money donated to the Solidarity Fund was never intended to be distributed on the basis of race. It was to be distributed as emergency relief. And so those are the two main issues that we have with this contribution, or let's say this exclusionary policy by the National Empowerment Fund.
Solidarity Fund. I mean, suppose the name kind of gives it away, what its intentions are supposed to be. But okay, the motto of the National Empowerment Fund, I had a quick look. Their motto is literally growing black economic participation. They're pretty clear about what they seek to achieve. Should we hold them accountable for that? I mean, should we be surprised by that, I mean?
Yeah, I don't think there's reason to be surprised, except that the surprise here is really the Solidarity Fund's contribution to this. It's obvious what the National Empowerment Fund does, and I think what we should be doing as business is not support entities that do that. I mean, is that the kind of policies that we want to promote in South Africa? And so the surprise really is in the source of the funding. Now, most of the funding for the National Empowerment Fund comes from government, and it's government policy to do things like this, and that's to be challenged in courts, and we do that on some levels, and it's to be challenged in Parliament, and that's being done at some level. And so that's not too surprising. The surprising part here is the Solidarity Fund's contribution, and so that's why we sent a information access request to the National Empowerment Fund. It's a state entity, to ask what the terms of the funding from the Solidarity Fund was, and on the basis of which these allocations were made. And so that's the surprising part. The surprising part is that it appears that businesses, even if they didn't intend for the money to be for this purpose, in the end, the Solidarity Fund did allocate it for this. I don't think it's the spirit of the contributions made to the Solidarity Fund.
Yeah, and as you've previously said, the point is that you can be black and white, you can be co-owners in a business, and you're penalized.
Yeah, Sakeliga is active in public interest litigation, and one of the piece of litigation that we were active in earlier this year, actually for 5 years, but we received judgment in the Constitutional Court earlier this year, was in the procurement regulations that were brought into being 5 years ago under Minister Pravin Gordhan. And we were able to have them set aside because they were ultra vires, not within his powers. But what that said, and what became practice in many state-owned enterprises, municipalities and so on for the past 5 years, was to limit tenders in government to black-only owned or black-only managed companies. And the irony of policies like this, and like what the National Empowerment Fund is now doing under the guise of other enabling legislation or regulations, which have not yet been challenged, is that they are penalizing inter-community cooperation at the ownership level, at the management level, and at the employee level. And we must realize the implication of funding and giving subsidies to businesses, but restricting that to the race, is that we're penalizing those that cross that boundaries. And I think that is harmful to normal business relationships, and I think the direction you want an economy and a country like South Africa to go in.
There was a hell of a backlash after that judgment. Was it a Constitutional Court judgment you're speaking about, Pitt? The one where politicians are coming out saying that the Con Court has ruled against BEE in the country?
Yes, in the Supreme Court of Appeal, we were also victorious. That was 18 months, 2 years ago. And no one less than Ace Magashule himself came out with a blasting press release from the ANC saying this is terrible and, it's a blow for transformation and so on. But the point is that, no, the judgment was in our favor because the minister acted beyond the scope of his powers. Now, that's not the end of BEE. It's a government policy and it comes in many guises, but it's important to push back against BEE because it's harmful to the end result, which is the flourishing of everybody in South Africa. It detracts from what it is its ostensible goals. We can get into that some other time. But just to say that that was a very controversial judgment, but Sakeliga is committed and we're preparing for several more cases of litigation on other aspects of BEE. It's a tough subject to tackle, but it has to be done. It's really a harmful policy.
While I've got you, Pitt, since it's along the same lines, you're also opposed to Cabinet's intention to impose black economic empowerment on the legal profession via the Legal Practice Council. What can you tell me about that? So the Legal Practice Council is a statutory body that was created a few years ago as a part of the reform of the legal profession in South Africa, and it brings it under much stricter government control. The Legal Practice Council and the Legal Practice Code that has been announced by government is an attempt to introduce BEE into the legal profession. Now, of course, when we say we oppose BEE, I must stress that we oppose the policy of black economic empowerment. Of course, we're not against empowerment, and there are many ways to empower, and it is apt that legal professionals and anybody else in the country should seek the empowerment of the people they do business with and the profession and so on across many categories, and that could include race. But what this new code does is actually gives Minister Ibrahim Patel a lot of power, because he'll now be able to prescribe sector codes, much like in other industries, to which legal professionals should adhere. And if they don't, of course, that will come with different levels of penalization. We have to still read what will actually be published, these draft codes, and then I can tell you more. But in principle, introducing BEE into the legal profession detracts from the professional relationship that should exist between a client and his representative. That relationship
is a very important relationship that cannot be dictated from external political considerations. And we cannot have the minister say who should be somebody's legal representative based on race, or penalize somebody for choosing his client or his representative, among other things, based on race. We cannot allow that. It's unacceptable. And so Sakeliga certainly seeks to oppose that. We oppose that in principle, and we have to see what the actual draft regulations entail. I should add that there's a second important danger to the constitutional order itself. The legal profession is a very important part of the balance of forces in any country. It's part of the classical idea of the trias politica, the legislature, the executive, but also the judiciary. And if we allow political considerations to run roughshod over what the professional relationships in the legal industry itself should be, we will detract from the ability of the judiciary in the end to function as it should in maintaining a balance of power in society.
Piet le Roux, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Michael.